Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Murmuhu. So we'll continue from where we left. After the birth of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Shardananji, before he commences describing the Balya Leela, you see the great master or the divine play of Sri Ramakrishna. It is called divine play because it's a custom to consider the life of an avatara as a play, because he is not bound by karma like ordinary jivas. The incarnation, for the benefit of humanity, he subjects himself to all the laws of karma, as it were, though he is not bound by karma. He is the karmadhisha, means one who controls the karmas of other people. Then why does he subject himself to the laws of karma? Why does he suffer? Why does he undergo all the things which a normal human being does? That discussion, Swami Shardananji is trying to explain before explaining the divine Leela. Otherwise, in all the incarnations, including Sri Rama, they say he wept like an ordinary husband would wife if somebody has taken away his wife. So he literally cried. Lakshmana had to console him. So he is an incarnation. Obviously, he knew what is going to happen. He was going to rescue Sita. Perhaps he was aware of that. So why do incarnations behave like normal human beings when they incarnate? The reason Swami Shardananji gives in this, before he starts describing the Balya Leela, as I told you, there are 5 parts to the divine play of Sri Ramakrishna, which is also known as Sri Ramakrishna, the great master. The first part is the Balya Leela, the childhood and youth the childhood part. The second part is his Sadak Bhava. Sadak Bhava means it starts with his early youth and then it extends up to the completion of his sadhana, all different sadhanas that he did, beginning with the worship of the Divine Mother, then Vaishnava sadhana. He did all types of spiritual practices, even Advaita. Then he practiced religion as the Christians would practice, and also the Islamic Sufi type of sadhana which he did. So all these things are described in the Sadhaka Bhava. And when the Sadhak Bhava is over, there are 2 parts, 2 volumes, small volumes. They're not very small, but the third part is known as Guru Bhav Purvardha. Purvardha means the first part of his Guru Bhav. Guru Bhav has been dealt with extensively for 2 reasons. That is the period when 2 classes of disciples came to Sri Ramakrishna. As a result of his sadhana, he attained so many realizations that he used to go on the top of the kuti where he was staying, and he used to cry out to the Divine Mother, "Why did you make me do all these sadhanas? Please send people to whom I can transmit that knowledge, transmit that experience." So slowly people started coming. The second group of devotees, the first group were householder devotees, but then a young group started coming, who later on became monastics, beginning with Vivekananda, Brahmananda and all. So anyway, that Sadhak Bhav has been divided into, the Guru Bhav has been divided into 2 parts, Guru Bhav Purvardha, Guru Bhav Uttarardha, means the second part of his Guru Bhav. That is towards the end of his life. A lot of people came after the direct disciples and Master Mahashay, who wrote the gospel. He was also one of the intimate disciples. So that Guru Bhav Uttarardha describes the second set of devotees who came. And finally, the Divya Bhav and Narendranath, that last chapter or the last book, the 5th part of Leela Prasanga, extensively deals with Narendranath, because you should remember that this book was written because Swami Vivekananda knew that his life was short. And Girish Chandra Ghosh and others said, why don't you write a biography of Sri Ramakrishna? He said, I am not born for that. I mean, he knew his life was short. So he told Swami Shardanandji to gather some material, because lot of biographies were coming out which were not authentic. Some of the householder disciples like Ramchandra Datta, they also wrote some biographies. And Swami Vivekananda felt, even while Swami Vivekananda was alive, they wrote the biographies of Ramakrishna. And they felt that they are mixing religion, or mixing the pure spiritual approach of Sri Ramakrishna with many other things. And it was not an accurate life. So in response to that, Swami Shardanandji started gathering information from people who were still alive, who had seen Sri Ramakrishna when he did sadhana. There were some people, old people living in Kamarpukur, who had seen Gadadhar as a child. They were still alive at that time. We should remember that Sri Ramakrishna passed away when he was 49 years. He was hardly 50. So naturally, some people who were in their 80s or even 70s, mid 70s, they would have seen him as young Gadadhar. So he was busy collecting all the information he could, because he was not witness to Sri Ramakrishna's Balya Leela or the childhood days. So he had to depend on Hriday Ram and other people who knew him as a child. Not Hriday Ram was much younger than Thakur. But there were other members of his family, his relatives in Kamarpukur, in Calcutta, who had seen him, not only as a child, but also as a youth. So he was collecting information, and Swami Vivekananda, when he came to England, Max Muller wanted to write a biography of Sri Ramakrishna. So he asked Swami Shardanandji to give whatever he had compiled. And that short life, Sri Ramakrishna, his life and sayings, were were edited by Max Muller. Very little editing he did. He practically published the script as it is. Of course, his name, he was a very great scholar of Oxford University. So the moment he published, the whole world came to know, the English reading public came to know. So that can be called a very authentic life of, the first authentic life in English of Sri Ramakrishna. The material which he had collected, in fact, were enlarged. I mean, the material he used for this great master. That is what we are given to understand, that Swami Shardanandji, when he came to England, he handed over the whole script. The very small, it's a small book with a short life and some sayings, some teachings, which are very authentic. So Max Muller thought he should publish it as it is. Because it was published in his name, Max Muller's name, everybody thinks that he was the author. But it was Swami Shardanandji who wrote and gave that whole material, the whole script, or not the script, the whole text, or the material for the book, Sri Ramakrishna, his life and sayings. But after that, he continued to collect materials. And he was, as all of you know, he was a doctor by profession. He was studying medicine. He could not complete it. So he came to Sri Ramakrishna while he was still in medical school. So he had a sound knowledge of biology, the human body, the human personality, the nervous system. So we'll find, and plus he was a student of history. He studied many other subjects. So he knew the lives of the prophets of the past, not only of Hinduism, but also Christianity and other religions. So he could write a comparative study, and also, just as a lawyer would try to convince the judge or whoever he's pleading before, trying to prove his case or trying to establish the truth behind the incidents. So this is a biography with a difference. He doesn't expect the modern reader to believe whatever things happened in Sri Ramakrishna's life. And moreover, Swami Vivekananda was very particular. He said, please don't mention any miracle. Even if it may be true, just take care that you don't make Sri Ramakrishna's life appear as miraculous. So people will run after the miracles. They will not take the essence of his life and message, which had nothing to do with miracles. Like most of the incarnations, if you find, there are incidents which are superhuman, in the sense you will find that. And then people are fascinated by that. But Swami Vivekananda believed if such a life is written, though there may be true incidents which show that he was supernatural, then people will say, what will I learn? After all, he is an avatar. He will do all these things. It is possible for him to do all these things. He is a superhuman being. So I am a human being. I am an ordinary human being. What can I learn from his life? So Swami Shardanand followed that advice of Swami Vivekananda. Though they knew of certain miraculous things which happened, he refrained from including that in his biography. And he said, all the actions of Sri Ramakrishna were to help an ordinary man, an ordinary human being, living a life in the household or a monastic life, whichever life he chose to live, how to get inspiration from Sri Ramakrishna's life based on his teaching. So his teachings and his whatever he said, he practiced. So naturally, when Swami Shardanand is explaining his life, he is like a lawyer trying to prove, not only prove, but he is not expecting the reader, who is always full of doubts, to believe, to just believe. Especially in many of the biographies of great prophets, if you see, there are so many miracles. And they think because of the miracles, they are avatars. But here, Swami Vivekananda, Swami Shardanand has a different approach. He said, if he is an avatar, if he can perform miracles, then people will think it is possible only for him. We are ordinary people. We can't do what he did. So he was intensely human. That is why he writes a note before he starts the Balya Leela. He was a great student of psychology as well. Apart from medicine, he studied a lot of psychology. So he says, when one studies human nature, it becomes very obvious that the higher a person's mind rises, the more intense is the pain caused by subtle desires. Now, what does it mean? He gives an example. He says a person who has committed theft, who has habitually stolen many things. So he does not have a conscience. He says it is natural. I have stolen 100 times, so 101 times doesn't matter. So he can repeat those acts because he is very gross. He does not feel any pangs of guilt. He does it. He thinks it is very natural to steal. It is my profession to steal. I will steal. So he doesn't suffer much. That is what Swami Shardanand is trying to explain. But if a noble person, even if by mistake somebody blames him, he feels terribly guilty. And he says, how can people doubt me? Because his standards are very high. He is not used to be blamed for the untruth or whatever So the more subtle and the more noble a person, the more he is suffering. That is his logic. Otherwise, how can you explain why did Sri Ramakrishna suffer? He is an incarnation. Why should he suffer? So he is trying to tell that the more noble or high-minded a person is, even if he is blamed for something very small, he feels terribly guilty and suffers from great distress. Whereas a habitual thief and people who commit crime regularly, they become develop a very thick skin. they develop a thick skin, they are not affected. No amount of criticism, very shamelessly they will again go on robbing people and doing all the immoral deeds. So now Swami Shardananji says, although throughout their lives, these incarnations refuse to indulge in the enjoyment of the gross sensual objects, but if they don't struggle and don't show people that they are struggling, because normal human beings will struggle to fight against, to control their mind and to not to do things which are very gross. So the incarnation's role is to set an example. He has to show that just as ordinary human beings, he also has to fight a lot against his own desires, like the rest of us. That is what Swami Shardanji says. Those horrible images of desire, it's very easy to say, don't have desires. But Sri Ramakrishna was very sympathetic. He said, it is easy to tell a person, don't do this, don't do that. As Swamiji said, it is very easy to tell a person, a child, you should not do this, you should not rob, you should tell the truth. But we don't teach the child how not to do it, how not to tell a lie, how not to. We don't teach him the technique. It is enough, it's not enough if you tell him, do this, don't do this, don't do this. So people who are always parents or teachers, if they always keep on telling the younger children, the children will rebel. They will say, why he is asking me not to do this, do that. First of all, they are doing the same thing and they are telling me not to do these things. And even if they are not doing it, they are telling me, but they are not teaching me how not to tell a lie. That is what here he says, Sri Ramakrishna had to suffer. He voluntarily suffered. And then he showed, see, even I had the same temptation. The images of desire which every human being or every noble human or spiritual human being is told to have some kind of control. He says, those they are not only cause distress in your minds, they have caused distress in my mind also. And because the noble mind feels the pain, their minds are very sensitive. So they feel much more pain than the gross people, than the ordinary people who don't mind even if we do some mistakes. Okay, what is there? Everybody does. So that is the logic most of the gross people use when they say, what is there the whole world is doing? Why should I not do? Therefore, the incarnation has to show that the struggles that ordinary human beings, the scripture says you have to withdraw the senses, you have to focus on the pure consciousness within you, and the refraining from mere objects, the external objects, not running after them. It is not an easy job. So the incarnation has to tell him how to do it, and he has to show that he also is struggling. It's not that he has, because he is an incarnation, then the human beings will say, the struggling householder will say, it is very easy for you to tell all these things. But he had to, that is why he had to even marry and show how difficult or how easy it is to live a life of spirituality even within the household. So he had to set an example for householders, he had to set an example for monks, he has to set an example how an ideal husband should be, he had to set an example how an ideal student should be or how an ideal guru should be. So he had combined in his own life, as Sri Krishna did in his own life. He had to play the role models of different characters which we encounter in life perfectly. If he sets a standard, if the incarnation shows that this is the 100% standard, then others will be inspired to practice at least 50% or even a part of what he did. So the human aspect of an avatar, that is the topic. Because people who read the scriptures, they say, why should I accept your statement that Ramakrishna is an avatar or anybody is an avatar? In the introduction to the commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, Shankara also, because you all know that Advaitins don't believe in incarnation. In fact, according to them, it's only a higher manifestation of divinity. So they don't give much importance. Though he is commenting on Sri Krishna's life in the commentary, though he believed in non-dualism or Advaita, he says, he comments, why is Sri Krishna's human birth so special? So God is in reality unborn. If God is the Brahman that he is trying to establish through his philosophy, that goes contrary. He said, how can a person who is unchanging, unborn, ajara, amara, and all those things we say about the highest reality? It is infinite, it is eternal. So how can you say that the Krishna who has been born in Gokula, then he not Gokula, he is born in the prison and then he is taken to Gokula, he grows up and then finally gives up his body in Prabhas. So what is that drama? I mean, how can he be subject to all these troubles, all these tribulations in life? Because he is in reality, Shankaracharya is asking the question and also answering. First he is asking, he said there may be a doubt in people's mind that God is unborn. We call him Ajara, Amara. Amara means immortal. Ajara means one who has not been born. So if he is not born, he cannot be born. The reality is infinite. He is unchanging. Sthavara means that is uh, unchanging. It's something which changes is known as Jangama. In the world, everything in Prakriti keeps on changing. So that which does not change in the midst of the changing things is known as the unchanging. Akshara, Akshaya. There are so many words used to describe the Brahman in Vedanta. And he is moreover the Lord of all created beings, if you believe in Ishvara. And by nature, eternal, pure, illumined and free. But he is also seen as though, Shankaracharya uses this word, he is as if he is born, means in reality he is not born. So this is his divine play. Shankaracharya would of course categorize it as Maya. By Maya we think it is an illusion. No, that is a very wrong translation of the word Maya. Maya is not, it is something which is very real as the world around us. But what Maya means is it is transitory. It keeps on changing. If anything keeps on changing, it is not illusory. It is. But according to the Advaitins, he cannot accept this idea. So he says, as though endowed with a body, means he creates a body through his own Maya. And he will quote from Gita. Gita, Krishna says that through the power of my Maya, I create this body of mine and the bodies that he sees around him, the whole universe. So he says, Shankara says, how can your statement hold true? Because if he's telling the opponent, the Dvaitins who believe in the incarnation, who believe in avatar, he said, it is just an illusion. Just as the world is an illusion, your avatar is also illusion. But Shardanji says, what Shankara has said is true from that point of view. But in order to understand Shankara, we must remember that he considers God to only seem to be endowed with name and form. For him, anything that has a nama and rupa. See, in this whole world, you take anything, any object, animate object, inanimate object, trees, plants. There is a nama, a name, and a form associated with that name. You cannot separate. Whatever be that name, in whichever language it may be, the connection between name and the form that it represents. If you say cow or go in Sanskrit, you say cow in English. To people who know English, it means only one thing. if they have seen the cow. So also the whole world is categorized by Shankara that whatever has a nama has a rupa, and that nama rupa is what makes it, gives it a temporary nature. You remove the name and the form, then you will find the pure consciousness. So he regards everything as false. I am talking only of the Advaitins. So for him, an avatara is equally false. Just as every human being, the world that is around you, then what is the utility of that avatara? So it is like Sri Ramakrishna explains it in a very nice way. He said, suppose a thorn has gone into your foot. You take another thorn, and using that thorn, you remove the other thorn and then throw away both the thorns. Sri Ramakrishna gave a beautiful example because it's so difficult to understand that why do we need a false incarnation if everything is name and form? Our incarnation also has a name. You say Krishna, the form of Krishna comes. So if you say the world is unreal, then Krishna is also unreal. Then why do I need Krishna in my life or any other incarnation in my life? So that is why Swami Sri Ramakrishna says, with one thorn, the thorn is useless. You don't, after removing the other thorn from your foot, you don't keep the other thorn inside. You throw away both. But you need a thorn to remove another thorn. See, these are wonderful philosophical questions or problems that Sri Ramakrishna is answering. So, if Shankaracharya considers the whole world to be an illusory superimposition, Brahman is real. They give so many examples that the snake, there is a rope in the dark. That is what Advaitins, they are very good at logic. They'll say, if there is a rope in the dark, you see, because of your fear, you think it is a snake. And your heart starts beating, you start running. And finally, somebody brings a light and shows up, why are you afraid? This is not a rope. This is not a snake, it is just a rope. But that happens only when there is light, when there is that illumination. So also Shankaracharya says that fear, that changing nature, even Buddha said that the whole thing that we see around us is just a kind of illusion as we have when we take the unreal to be real. So he says, it is not his intention to say that an avatara's incarnation or his experience of pleasure and pain are unreal. He can't say that because even though these sensations are real to us, so it cannot be, according to Advaita also, it cannot be that if our pains are unreal, if he has to convince us that our pain, our whatever we are seeing and suffering is because of illusion, then even God is subject to illusion. The sensations cannot be real to us. So if we accept our perceptions and feelings as real, then we must also accept those of the perceptions and feelings of avatars also to be real. That is why you'll find they behave exactly in the same way. They behave exactly as human beings. Avatarana means God comes down from a state which is very high to our level, so that he can show us how to struggle and how to overcome all the troubles from our level. Otherwise, if he stays at a higher level and says, now you do this, do that, nobody will be able to understand. That struggle has to be seen as a real struggle. So it's not just acting that he does, though it is known as a divine play, but though he is not doing it out of his own karma. We are doing it because we are helpless. We are suffering the results of our previous karma. But in the case of incarnation, he uses the power of Maya, as Shankaracharya would say, or the power of, you may say, Prakriti, to behave exactly as a jiva would do and show him that the suffering that you suffer is the same as what I suffer. In fact, it is more intense because I am more sensitive, I am more I mean, I am at a much higher level, but my suffering is also for that reason much higher. So if I can control it, if I can withstand it, then you should also do. So that is how this idea of incarnation is explained, or the human nature of an incarnation is explained. So if the advantage of accepting an incarnation, people who follow Advaita, they don't need the concept of incarnation. They can focus upon the pure consciousness and they deny everything by saying neti neti. But it is a very difficult path. How can you say the world does not exist when we are living, when we are feel hungry? So to say neti neti, to deny the gross reality in the beginning, it is difficult. But a much more normal and a much more normal approach is to accept an incarnation who is as human as us, but he has the capacity to demonstrate before us how to handle the problems and overcome them or transcend them. So he has to enact a real play, real drama. It's not a drama. In films and in drama, they are actors. Here, Swami Shardanji says he is not an actor, he is a participator in the drama. It is like the king, though he is acting as a ordinary subject, he comes and mixes with everybody. But the king has to actually dress like a ordinary citizen if he wants to just see what is the, what are the problems. Many times the kings used to do, they used to disguise themselves as ordinary human beings, mix with all the subjects, find out the problems, because if they come as a king, then nobody will tell, they will be afraid. So the king decides, let me take the dress. Though the dress is a play, it is a drama, but it is not acting as we do in drama. He really lives that life, maybe as a poor person, so that he can freely discuss with all the subjects. And when he goes back to the kingdom, he will understand what are the problems these people are facing. Good kings used to do that. So Swami Shardanji says, similarly, the Lord, he out of infinite compassion, he comes down to the plane of the ordinary human being. That is why it is known as avatarana. Avatarana means coming down. There are two ways to reach the higher plane. We can climb the staircase and go up slowly. That is what Advaitins tell you. You have to use your own effort. You have to climb the staircase, climb different levels of consciousness by using your own efforts. You have no help. Maybe your guru will help, but even then the sadhana has to be done by the disciple. In Advaita, they give the whole responsibility to you. He said, you have to do everything. Whereas in the bhakti tradition, in the tradition which accepts incarnation, he said, seeing the helplessness of human beings, the Lord feels compassionate, and then he says, okay, if he cannot climb, I will go down and carry him with me. That is the idea which Tulsidas conveys in his Ramcharitmanas. He is writing, Valmiki's Ramayana is discussed in one way, but if you see Tulsi Ramayana, which is full of bhakti, he will give this example. He said, the Lord, out of infinite compassion, Lord Rama came as a human being, cried as if any other husband would cry when the wife, everything he did, he suffered so much of pain. He was cheated by his stepmother. He went to the forest. Why did he have to do it if he's an incarnation? Because he says he comes down to show what an ideal person is. So what an ideal noble human being should be like, to show that Maryada Purushottam, we call him. Means he shows what an ideal man who follows dharma. For that he has to undergo these troubles. So Swami Shardanji is trying to show that don't think because he suffers like all other human beings, the incarnation does it willingly. He does it with a purpose in mind. He wants to show the people, give inspiration to the people that it is possible for every human being to he comes down so that he can teach us how we can go up the staircase. So avatarana means coming down. So the Lord has to come down to take us with him to a higher plane from where he has come. So, but Shardananji now, he was so logical and he wants to convince, especially the Western reader who did not believe in all this theology or maybe the idea of incarnation. He wants to discuss from a rational point of view. So he says that I can discuss this topic from another angle. So he says this topic will be very clear if we discuss this subject of avatara from another standpoint. So the scriptures say, he is quoting, that there are two types of idea of the world. You see, the need for spirituality is that we are in this world, we should know the nature of the world and how to live in this world. That is the simple thing which spirituality does. It is not just a hobby or a passion that some people have. Everybody should, because we are in this world, because we are supposed to know how to live in this world, we should have a clear idea of the world. We have to be very clear why are we here, how long, what is the purpose of my life and what is the goal of my life. So, non-dualists give a different solution. Non-dualist means Advaitins. So, two types of ideas, because since the beginning of humanity, since humanity started becoming civilized, our rishis, they thought very deep. They thought, is our life something that we live between birth and death? We are born and one day the body goes away. That is an intermediate, that is one phase of our life. What is there before one is born? What is there after one is born? What kind? Because everybody wants a sort of continuity. Nobody wants to, nobody can reconcile with the fact that all that I did in this one life, say 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, I've been running and gathering so many things. One day will I have to give up everything? What happens? No doubt you can console yourself saying that it will go to my children, or it may or may not go. It will be used properly or not, we do not know. But nothing goes with us. So if we are really bothered about what is going to happen after we die, then we should know what happened before we were born. So from the Advaitic point of view, he says, so that there are different theories of reality, which our Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, they give different ideas. Certain ideas appeal to certain people, they understand it one way, and they give different explanations of the world as they understand it. So he says there are two approaches to life. One is the Advaitic way, non-dualistic plane, and other from a dualistic plane, which considers this world is very much real. Avatara is real, we are real, the things that are around. Whereas non-dualists, right from beginning, he says, because it is not eternal, it is not real. I am not bothered whether the world is real or not. I know for sure that I don't want to waste my time with this. But that is a very high state. The Advaitin just says neti neti. Whatever comes, he says, if this is not permanent, then I don't want it. He will reject everything. That is one way of looking at the world. So when we try to examine the reality of the world by looking at it from the Advaitic perspective, we realize, the rishis realize, or the Shankaracharya and all who follow that path of Advaita, they have to realize it, not just get intellectually convinced. Understanding Advaita is one thing, academically understanding, but to really experience it, one has to really feel that the world does not exist. That happens only in Samadhi. So he will give a very simple explanation, though it is simple to understand but difficult to practice. He says, Advaitin, for him the problem of avatara, problem of suffering, nothing is there. Even Buddha, he says the world did not exist it is, even if it exists, not eternal according to Buddha. But it really doesn't bother, because whether it lasts for 10 years or 100 years, it is even though it lasts for 100 years, still it is temporary from the ultimate point of view. So I have nothing to do with this. So he gets a conviction as a result of his Advaitic sadhana that the world, even if it existed, is not real for me. It is not real. It was not real in the past. It was not real in the present, and it will not be able to cheat me and make me go run after it. The Advaitin's view is very strong, and he has to be extremely strong to believe that I have to hold on to the permanent and not to hold on to the temporary. So Brahman is one without the second. So you see Totapuri, who was Sri Ramakrishna's guru, you know how they used to make them do sadhanas. It is something which we cannot imagine now. He came to the monastery in Kurukshetra. That was his monastery. He was from Haryana. And in there, Puri Sampradaya, Totapuri, his guru was, his ashram is still there. I mean, that tradition. Small children, they come and join the monastery. And you know the type of training they are given, the mental training they are given, even as small children, that they have to take a vow that they will not stay under any roof any time. They will have to stay under the tree, whether it rains, whether hot sun is there. So that child is trained in such a way, if you see the training that they give, that after a certain age, they really don't believe that the world is real. He said it doesn't really matter whether there is sunshine. Even the Jains did this. They go to an extreme. That is one way, that if Brahman alone is real, then why should I be running after this? So that training, and it took 40 years for him. When he came to Sri Ramakrishna, Totapuri was surprised, because Sri Ramakrishna realized what he realized in 40 years in just 3 days. He simply went into samadhi. So to tell that Brahman is one without the second, and not experience it, is hypocrisy. So these people, they give them that kind of training where they really don't bother whether their body lives or not. He had tremendous strength. In fact, he never lived under a roof his whole life. When he came to Dakshineshwar, he was staying under the tree day and night, and walking without any slippers or anything. Just the body really did not, I mean, that was the kind of training these Advaitins give. But that is one viewpoint. But all do not have the capacity to follow that sadhana. So when we consider this world to be real, we say, okay, that is true for him, because he was born and brought up in that tradition. But we are ordinary people. We see things around us. We have names and forms. We can't give it up. Then is there no hope for us? So Avtaras and Jivan Muktas have that body, but they lack this body consciousness. They may spend the whole life in the Advaitic consciousness. For Sri Ramakrishna, it was very easy. But when they come down to the dualistic plane, they definitely feel that the world is unreal as a dream. That is why Totapuri made fun of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna used to clap and sing the Divine Mother song. So he used to tell in Hindi, "Kyun roti thok rahe ho? This is nothing. You are all this. Your mother, Kali's image, they are all dream. You are in a dreamy world. You give up the dream. You are such a great person. I will give you that Advaitic realization. Don't run after this imaginary puja and this Kali and all those things." Because they really feel, they have been trained to feel that the world is like a dream. But when compared to the waking state, just as the dream appears to be unreal, but while one is dreaming, this is the logic dualists use. They say, okay, we agree, the world is like a dream. But when you are dreaming, do you ever think that it is a dream? It becomes real. People see so many nightmares, And when they are dreaming, they even sweat. They think they are gone. Some snakes are biting them, and they are jumping. See, they are dying. Some people get horrible dreams. They got good dreams also. But does the person who is dreaming think that he is dreaming? He thinks it is real. So one does not understand. It may be easy to say, but when you dream, it looks for it. The heart also starts beating, but only when you wake up, oh, then you laugh. Oh, it was just a dream. But when you are dreaming, you really feel it is true. So that is how they say, okay, we agree with you that this whole world is temporary, but all the problems that we face, all the depression and all the things that happen to us, you may say from your standpoint, as Totapuri said, from Advaitin standpoint, they don't care. But we people feel it. This dream is very real because we are still dreaming. So also the perception of the world in the mind of avatars and illumined souls cannot be regarded as unreal. So don't think it is just a natak or just a drama. They feel just as we feel in dream that the dream is real. When we wake up, of course, we say, oh, that was a dream. And then we are relieved also. We are happy. Oh, it was just a dream. It was not real. So also avatars, they are, according to Swami Shardanand here, is trying to explain, they also feel that this world is real, just as any human being. Otherwise, how will they guide us if they don't know what misery is, what suffering is? That is why Swami Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna knew when his father died, he had no job, so many problems he had to face. Then Sri Ramakrishna told somebody that he is a person who knows that the world is unreal. If these troubles don't come to his life, he will just go into samadhi. But I have kept the key with me. I want him to do some work. That is why he was forced to feel. In fact, he says in the West also when he came, he says it is very strange. I don't know why, but in this short life, he says, whomsoever I love, he dies young. Goodwin died when he was young. Some of his very promising disciples died when they were doing excellent work. So he says, I sometimes feel that God is not just. I feel it very strange because Goodwin was his very favorite disciple and he was so devoted to him that he died. He had gone to Uti, though they had warned him not to watch. He was crazy about cricket. So he was just watching a cricket match in Uti in that cold, and there was heavy rain and he got pneumonia and died. So Swamiji was totally shocked. He was just 30 years old, younger than Swamiji. So he said, it is very strange. And many others also died. Maharaja Ajit Singh died. Many of his disciples died before him. So he says, it is very strange that anybody whom I love, he dies young. That means he also had to suffer. Sri Ramakrishna saw that if he doesn't suffer, he will not understand the pain of other people. He will not have that compassion. So that is why these avatars or the other people who come with the avatars, they voluntarily or whether with their knowledge or with the divine will, they undergo suffering so that they can guide other suffering souls who are not so strong to endure that. So in spite of all the troubles, they show by the power of will, power of their. If you see the life of Swami Vivekananda in England, he was a juvenile diabetic patient. Everybody knows the Ayurvedic doctor who used to treat. He told his father that this boy has to be always active. In those days, there was no insulin and other things. So he said, teach him boxing, make him very active physically. That is why his father put him in the wrestling, akhada, they used to call akhada. So he was he learned boxing, he was horse riding, many things. Because In those days, according to Ayurveda, the only way that you can make a person who is diabetic right from childhood to live is to burn the sugar so that it doesn't get accumulated. There was no other method. So he had to work hard, and that hard work actually saved him so that he lived at least 39 years. Normally, it was very difficult for such uh, people who are born with that disease to live so long. So it was sheer willpower or the struggle that he had to undergo, traveling, cooking food, going here, staying in most difficult circumstances in the biting cold of London. In fact, he says the place where he stayed was known as the dark hole of London. It was a basement flat, and in November, December, without heating, he stayed there. So you can imagine why, if these troubles had not come. In fact, he once he told his Guru Bhai Akhandanandji that I have not seen the Himalayas, I will go with you. And he went to a cave in Himalayas in Almora, and he was meditating there. He was enjoying that meditation. He was born for that meditative life. The moment he settled down, or maybe he was enjoying that meditation, he got a telegram from his and his family that his sister had committed suicide. It was a dowry death. She died unfortunately, and that he says, why God is not even allowing me to just meditate quietly? And that brought him down again. So constant misery, and that Sri Ramakrishna also said that he's suffering so that he can bring his mind down. Otherwise, he will simply go into samadhi as he wanted. He said, I don't want to have anything to do with this world. He was a born yogi or a born dhyan siddha person. Right from childhood, he was ready to go into the highest state. But the incarnations or the companions of the incarnations, they have to undergo, it's not acting, they really underwent suffering. When his sister died, he was so morose for days and days together. And he said, I'll have to do something for the development, for the education of women. In fact, that is what motivated him, requested Nivedita that these women, because they are not educated and the family where they are married, they torture these people. If they were independent, if they could lead a life independent of anybody in society, if they can stand on their own legs. So it is the death of his own sister. I'm not saying that was the only reason. He has seen so much of suffering when he traveled in India. So his mind was always there. When he came to England, if he saw an empowered woman, he would say, can you do this for me? Can you help our Indian women? They are struggling because of ignorance. A little bit of education, a little bit of self-confidence can change their lives. So it's not that they don't feel, they really feel when they lose their own family members. In fact, if you see the life of Arjuna also, what made him become spiritual? It was the very prospect of killing his own guru, his own Bhishma, and other people who were, he could not believe that is, I have prepared myself for war and now I have to kill. Perhaps if they kill me, it is okay, but how can I kill my own guru, Dronacharya? So that shocked him. So they have to undergo these difficulties. They have to see their near and dear ones. Even Arjuna and the Pandavas had to suffer. All their children were killed even before the war ended. Most of all the children, Pandavas' children were killed. So what did they gain by this war? It is that, as Swamiji said, I have learned more from pain than from pleasure. So the avatars also are no exceptions. They don't, if they knew it is just a drama, then people will say, okay, the avatara will definitely they can undergo the suffering because they are realized souls. No, according to Sharadananji, they feel the impact. They feel the same pain. In fact, he says they feel more pain than the ordinary people. So the more spiritual a person, the more pain he feels, but that doesn't mean he cannot endure. His endurance power also increases. That is what he's saying. It's not that spirituality will convince him that this world is unreal, so I am not bothered. No, that is not, that insensitivity is not referred to here. That Swami Shardanji is making clear. Don't take this life of Sri Ramakrishna lightly, or because it is the human side. That is what Swami Vivekananda told him. You emphasize more the human side, his life, his character, his struggle, his struggle to control, use his willpower to control his mind and not succumb to the objects of the senses. So they have to show, they have to literally show that it is possible. It is possible to lead such a life. So then he becomes an ideal. Otherwise, we will end up as most of the people do. They say, oh, we respect the Bhagavad so much. Some people, they don't even open the Bhagavad. They will tie it in a very costly cloth, silken cloth, they'll keep in their shrine, do arti. So much of puja they will do every day. But as Swami Ranganathan used to say, Bhagavad is not for worshipping. Open it and read it. That struggle, that life that is described in the Krishna's Leela, how much Krishna suffered. See his life. Right from childhood, he was born in a jail. He was born in a prison. And every time there was a danger that he will be killed. Of course, it looks like miracles, but he had to suffer a lot throughout his life. So many things happened in his whole life, but he was not disturbed. That is why the central message, according to Swamiji, of Krishna's life, as he has understood it, his life was his message. The Gita is nothing but the message of Sri Krishna's message given by Sri Krishna based on his own experience and own life. So he was an embodiment of detachment, or maybe you can call it non-attachment. Detachment is a negative word. Non-attachment. So if Sri Ramakrishna says something, says this is what, he has to do it himself and show that he is doing it not because he is an avatara, because he is a human being like us. He is also struggling. He also has desires, but he is struggling to control them. So you can't say their struggle is unreal, it is all a drama. Though we like to call it the divine play, you may call it a play, but it is a real play. It's not just acting, it is real. That is what he wants to make clear. And then, as I said, the world is experienced differently. He concludes with that when one attains a higher state. This is something we have to understand. What happens when you become spiritual? Does the world change? The world is the same. We live with the same people. But what happens is our attitude towards life changes. Nothing changes. That is one idea which makes people go away from spirituality. They think spirituality will help them to make things smooth. If you see the lives of all the incarnations, everybody has suffered. Sri Ramakrishna suffered from cancer. Sri Krishna was killed he willingly got himself killed by a hunter when he could have easily prevented that. So many things. Rama himself, you see, so many things. He could have definitely prevented, avoided going to the forest. And everybody was supporting him. You don't have to do it because there is some evil intention behind your stepmother's decision. But he voluntarily suffered. So that is the role he has to play in incarnation to come down to the level of man. So here also, Swami Shardanji says, when a person becomes more spiritual, his attitude towards life changes, but the struggles continue. He is more prepared to undergo or face the struggles and negotiate with them, handle them. But it would be wrong to understand or to imagine that as a result of spiritual practices, our problems will cease. So in this world of duality, that is what he is saying. If an incarnation also cannot avoid, he shows that even an incarnation, even when they come with so much of divine consciousness, they not only suffer, but they suffer more than gross people, most ordinary people. Because as I said, if you are born with a thick skin, you don't think anything, 4 or 5 robberies if you do, he becomes so hard-hearted that he doesn't even bother. There are some people who can just kill people. You see, in this world it happens. You may feel that how can we ever kill? The noble and sensitive people said, how can one kill a person so mercilessly? Sometimes they kill even friends. So you find that for a gross person, the suffering is less because he is not, he does not have a conscience. But the moment you become noble and noble, your suffering also increases. But the positive side is, along with the increase in suffering, the capacity to withstand that suffering or capacity to transcend that suffering also increases. Otherwise, why will people practice spirituality? So that is the idea Swami Shardanand is trying to convey, that he is not giving a, he is not trying to demotivate us by saying that suffering is always there. He just says that please accept this fact that life has sweet fruits, has bitter fruits. Just as the Upanishadic story says, a bird was eating fruits from a tree. Some fruits were very bitter. But then when he said, no, I will not eat fruits anymore. These fruits are bitter. But suddenly it saw there is a sweet fruit. I mean, it tasted a fruit. So that sweet fruit motivated that bird to eat one more fruit. Suddenly it got a bitter fruit. Then it said, no, no, now I will not eat. But then suddenly a sweet fruit comes. So these dualities will always be there. So one cannot get rid of suffering. That is the idea, one of the ideas he is conveying. And more noble a person, the more his suffering. He suffers physically, suffers mentally also. Because he doesn't like to even harm somebody. Even if he harms a small thing that he does, he feels so regretful. You know that incident of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. He was showing so much respect to her that even by mistake he would not call her Tui. You know, in India, you will understand it more in the Indian context, where a male-dominated society, there is a tendency for, in many societies, not just Indian society, in other societies it is still worse, that they think that women have to endure more than men, and they think it is natural. They have more sahan shakti. You see Ramayana also. Sita, so many times she uh, proved that she was pure, and then again Rama is telling her, now you have to show once more just to convince people. So that gives an idea that right from beginning in human society, uh, the idea was that women have to be more enduring, and it is their duty to do because they have to bear the burden of the children and many things. And it is literally true. But Sri Ramakrishna came to reverse all these things. He wanted to show that till now it was a male dominated society where even spirituality was dominated by men. Nobody had ever heard of a woman as a guru. Swamiji says Sri Ramakrishna accepted Bhairavi Brahmani as a woman as a guru. And he showed so much respect to Holy Mother Sharda Devi that he could not even say Tui. Tui means in Bengali, when you address inferior people, you don't say aap. In Hindi, they say aap or apni. Apni means use that to address somebody who is superior. So women are normally addressed as Tui. The husband will not hesitate, they'll say Tui. But Sri Ramakrishna never used that. Even by mistake, he'll always say apni. Though she was much younger in age, he was born for that, to show respect, especially to show respect to women, because they were deprived of it for centuries and centuries in all cultures. So that was one reason why he incarnated. So that is why one day by mistake he thought it is his Lakshmi, was a young niece of his. So by mistake he said Tui. In India, for children, very small children, you can say it is pardonable, but not to married women, you can't say that. I mean, that is, Sri Ramakrishna at least did not do that. Then he realized it was not Lakshmi, but it was Ma Sharada who had come. And she, of course, kept quiet. She did not even think he had done some injustice. But then suddenly he saw, oh, it is not Lakshmi, not the child Lakshmi, but it is Holy Mother herself. Then he said, I am very sorry, I should not have said Tui. He said, it's okay, okay, and she went away. She didn't even care. She had no. But Sri Ramakrishna, for three successive days, every time the Holy Mother came, he used to tell her, see, by mistake, please forgive me. By mistake, I said, as if he has done a great crime. So that is what Swami Shardanand is saying, that their standard of purity, the standard of moral values is so high that even a small mistake, unintentional mistake, makes them suffer. So you can imagine, 3 days he is not getting, he said, I could not sleep because how could I utter that to you? So that shows that the nobler the heart, the more pure the heart, the more noble a person, the more pain they feel. So one should not assume that these incarnations or good people will not suffer. They suffer, but their power to endure increases with spirituality, and that gives them, that is the utility of spiritual life. If somebody asks, what does you, if it cannot remove our sufferings, if it cannot give us enjoyment, religion can never do that. If one has come to spirituality for that, as people think, now I am doing this puja so that my life will be very happy. If that were to be the case, then the people would not have had to work. They could get everything by worshipping, by offering some dakshina to some temple or some church, and they will get rid of all their problems. People, even now, they use it, but I don't think there is any religion or any system where these things really happen. They may happen by chance, you may solve some problem of yours, but it is just pure chance because of your good karma, not because of the ritual that you are doing. But anyway, here what he wants to say is the role of a incarnation is to come down. Avatarana means to come down to the level of the human being and show him how one can lead a life and negotiate all the problems of life and transcend, and it helps us to transcend the problems. You cannot solve the problems one after another. It never happens. You can solve the problems temporarily for temporary relief, but ultimately one has to transcend. So I'll take your leave. We have taken a little more time. There is a question, but maybe I'll answer next time. Oh, there is one question now. I'll have to, that is a very big. Sharon is asking, what happened to Rabindra? Rabindra was, actually, he was given Gerua, but unfortunately, because of his karma, as I told you, he was tortured by his wife. In those days, those who were married were also given sannyas. But this is an exception. That poor fellow was so much tortured by his wife that he literally became mad. She made his life so difficult. So this is an exception. You cannot compare that. That is why Sri Ramakrishna had to come to show what respect is. But this lady was very difficult. That is why he had to run away from his house. He literally came running, and Master Mashe temporarily, of course, he did not have that vairagya, but he came, and then he was helped. It is there in the appendix of the first volume. I know that 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 incident is discussed in the 5th part of Leela Prasang. When it comes, we'll discuss. It is a very long incident. You have to understand it properly. So I'll answer it in my when the topic comes. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.